And hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's presentation of OTF Connects, Heartware in the Classroom using 2.0 to connect students globally with Mally Bickley and Jim Carlton. And on behalf of Syria Skirhan, who is the administrator and facilitator of the OTF Connects program, we do thank you very, very much for giving up your own time to join in this session tonight and to participate in any of the other OTF Connect sessions. And in case you aren't aware at this point, you probably are, while the political climate is still a little bit up in the air, teachers are certainly still able to participate in self-directed PD, and so this is one of those options that you have. So thank you very much for taking that opportunity. I am just going to go ahead over to this slide now, and if you want to grab one of the clip art icons, again, that is the very bottom tool on your toolboard strip. It looks like a little landscape photo, and when you click on that, go ahead and switch to the Common Symbols tab and grab a shape that you would like to use and drop it on the map in approximately the location you're joining us from tonight. Very good. And if you're feeling really adventurous, you can grab the text tool and drop that on the screen too and type in the name of the city or town you're in. Hello, Joanne. Welcome to the session. We're just getting underway right now. I'll give you a moment to get settled, or perhaps Joanne, once all your slides are loaded, if you see the Map of Ontario slide there, you can go ahead and grab a clip art icon and drop your location on the map. Well, I'm going to just ask Joanne, can you hear me? You can give me a thumbs up if. Oh, okay. I think that's you that just put the orange arrow on.
That's right. It just took me a minute.
Okay, perfect. Glad you're here. Thanks for joining. All right, that looks like a pretty good showing for us here in Ontario. It's just a small group. We're still spread all over the place. Okay, I am going to move ahead to the next slide and turn it over to Jim and Mally. Thank you.
So hi ladies, thanks as Louise said, thanks for spending your own time and coming into the webinar, and I know that it's been a really busy time at school and it's a really busy time of year, so we really appreciate you being here. So I'm Mally and I teach grade 5 in Bradford, Ontario, and it's, sorry, I'm just, yeah, and I teach grade 5 and it's busy and fun, and we're just going to talk about a few of the programs that have really made teaching exciting for us over the past couple of years, and I'll turn it over to Jim.
Hi everyone, and my name is Jim Carlton, and right now I'm an ICT consultant with Simcoe County District School Board, but Mally and I used to teach in the same school. And now we're not, even though we're not in the same school, we still obviously connect all the time on a variety of different projects. But interestingly enough, when we were in the same school probably for about 7 or 8 years, I mean, obviously we knew who each other were, but we didn't work together a whole lot because, you know, we were teaching different grades, and at that time it was sort of like, well, why would we be working together? We're not teaching the same thing. And then we started getting connected with some of these projects, and for both of us at that period of time in our lives, about 8 years ago now, we're starting to consider, starting to reevaluate whether or not we wanted to continue with teaching. I was at that point in my career about halfway through where I thought I still enjoyed it, but I was losing my passion for it. And it was through getting involved in these sorts of projects that we're going to be showing you that it reinvigorated, number one, reinvigorated my passion for teaching, and also at the same time it was only through getting involved in these projects that I actually started to use technology, because prior to that I avoided technology like the plague. Wanted nothing to do with it. I looked at it as, at least my excuses anyway were that I felt it was dehumanizing, and I still do believe that it can be if it's used inappropriately. But when I'm honest with myself, it was because I didn't know what I was doing, and especially back then it was more difficult. These Web 2.0 tools really weren't available then. Technology was a little bit more difficult to use, and I was just afraid to ask questions. But what happened was we started to get involved in these projects, and as soon as I had, and sort of a common theme that we're going to have throughout this evening is, once you have a reason to use it, I think you then learn how to use the tools. So for us and most people I know, it hasn't been about let's go out and learn how to use all these tools and then figure out how to use them or why we would use them. I think it's more important to have, if you have that reason or purpose to do something, you'll find a way to use the tools, and or your students will help you along that journey. And so Mally has a little story along those lines too.
So very similar to Jim, when we were teaching together, Jim was right down the hall, actually was 2 classrooms over, and we didn't really work together, but because we had different grades, and I found around that time that I was, instead of teaching children, I was delivering curriculum, and some of you might remember those days where we had all those curriculum expectations that we literally had to check off week by week when we completed them. And one day I just said, you know what, this isn't for me anymore, and I took a little bit of a break from teaching. I actually left for about 6 months and sort of reevaluated what I wanted to do. And Jim, when I was off, Jim sort of mentioned to me some of these projects that he was just getting involved in. He was starting his some connections with kids in Sierra Leone, and it sounded intriguing, and I came back and really reevaluated what I was teaching and how I was teaching, and I really decided right then and there that I was going to teach kids instead of delivering curriculum, and that moment changed everything when I said, you know, I was really going to have the kids do some investigations and really focus on project-based learning and really listen to what the kids wanted to learn as opposed to what I wanted to teach them. And it changed everything. And I think that you'll see the way that the projects work. They're really engaging, they're exciting, but every time we do one of these projects, the curriculum does always come first, because we still have to justify to our administrators that we're you know, still meeting those expectations, but we really find that we're going at it in a different way, and learning is just much more engaging and more meaningful for the kids. We're still doing the reading and the writing and math and social studies and science, but it just looks a little bit different. So I hope that when we go through some of these projects, you're going to be able to say, oh, this is exactly how we can fit it into our writing program, or this is media literacy, or oh, I see exactly how this can fit into grade 5 or 6 science. So sort of having said that, we're going to do a little quiz. This one is about the tool. But we just want to see, to get to know you a little bit, because we're all spread out. And so what we're going to do is, if you can log into Socratic.com and log in as a student, and when you get to that site, you'll see it's going to prompt you for a classroom. And I'm going to invite you actually into my classroom space. I call my students the Dream Team. We're up to Dream Team 6. And you're going to see a little quiz there that's going to just ask you some questions about what you teach and where you teach and some of your areas of interest. And then from that, Jim and I will be able to sort of gear our presentation towards where we're looking. And what I'm seeing right now is that we've got 2 or 3 people in. And I think there's only 3 questions, or 4 questions. And I can see when you're answering the questions as well. And this is a great tool to use with your students. I use it a lot as having exit tickets. They can use any device. They can use their iPad or their phone, or they can answer a question on a computer and then leave it for the next student to answer the question. And I can see as the kids are answering the questions, and I can check for understanding. It's one of those just easy, quick survey question. You can do survey questions, you can do multiple choice, and the kids love it. It's just an alternative to having the clickers in the classroom. And you can actually add some text questions in here as well too, if you want to extend their thinking. So as soon as I see that everybody's answered the 4 questions, I'm going to download the document and actually send it to Louise, and then we can share it in a little bit, and you can share it with Jim.
Hi, Nicole. So you can use it however you like. You can use it to create surveys, quizzes, short answer questions, that sort of thing. It's like using clickers or Sentio units, but the advantage is you don't actually have to have those units. You can use any web-enabled device that you have. So whether it's a laptop, iPad, a tablet, cell phones, anything that can connect to the internet, you can create polls and answer them this way. There's apps for Android and Apple, and I think I saw just in the pod somebody was saying that they don't have a classroom, they're an itinerant teacher, so just select whichever, whether it's primary, junior, intermediate that you do your itinerant teaching with. If it's all of them, just select the one that's in the middle or something. That would be a case where we should have put in another question maybe. Yeah, so you can use a laptop, anything that connects to the internet, you can, yeah, that's great, thanks Joanne. Anything that connects to the internet, you can use to have the students respond. So we good there, Mally, do you think? I'm not sure. We might have just lost Mally. So I'm going to assume that everybody's...
Yeah,
Mally set hers... Oh, there she is.
Sorry. I forgot to press the button. Yeah, I was just going to send it to Louise so that we can all take a look, because then you'll be able to see what the results look like and how we can share that.
That's great, thanks Nellie, because the nice thing is you can export all the data to a spreadsheet and then manipulate it however you like, that sort of thing. It's a great, nice, free tool, lots of possibilities with that. So do you want me to start with this, Nellie, then while you're just doing that, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so while Nellie's doing that, I'll just start with the sort of main part of our presentation. So what we're going to be looking at mostly today is the C part of ICT. So when you think of ICT or information communication technology, the part that's really changed over the last few years with when you hear of Web 2.0 tools is that communication part. It's so easy now for us to be able to communicate and collaborate, to share with one another, to affect change in our communities. The co-learning part of it to us is a really, really big part of it, because I think it really does allow for us to teach in different ways that we've been hearing about for 20 plus years, about being the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage and that sort of thing. But these tools really, really help to make it happen. So I love this quote, and this was written by Alvin Toffler, a futurist way back, I think it was the late 70s or something, so it's been around for a long, long time, but it definitely applies to what's happening in our world today. And it's not saying that we don't need to be able to read and write, because I think of course we do, but probably a lot of us have seen those shift happen videos, or the world is based on the world is flat, and the whole notion that our students are going to have 14, 15, 16 different careers throughout their lifetimes, and they're going to be constantly having to to learn, unlearn, and relearn, just like we are, even if you stay within a single career like most of us probably are, and there might be some of you that have switched careers, but even if you, within the world of teaching, as evidenced by what we're doing tonight, things are constantly changing, and you have to, like Mally and I was saying, that within our teaching careers, we've completely changed now the way that we used to teach.
And I love,
this is,
oh, sorry, go ahead. I love this quote because we're going to be talking a little bit about Jennifer Corriero, and she's the founder of an organization called Taking It Global that engages students all over the world in social action using a social networking site called Taking It Global, and they're involved in social networking for social good. And I love what she says about wondering if young people are actively engaged in all aspects of society and if they thought of themselves as community leaders, problem solvers, role models, mentors, and key stakeholders, how would the world change? And when we're talking about some of these projects and tools, you're going to see that it's really about the students learning how they can make a difference and take action, and really seeing that they can be change makers. And you know, when we are working with the students, we see this. We see developments in character education, and we see that they're using problem-solving skills, and they're becoming role models. And you know, we talk about 21st century skills, but we also need to talk about, you know, building character skills as well. So go ahead, Jim. And Louise, I just sent that spreadsheet to you if we want to share it at some point.
Great. So when we hear about these Web 2.0 tools, or so-called new literacies, and we all, you know, hear of blogs and wikis and video sharing sites like YouTube and podcasting, social networking, you know, these are all these Web 2.0 tools, with, you know, Web 1.0 is being so-called read internet, where you use the internet primarily as a place to go and get information, but most people weren't publishing to the internet because it required a fairly sophisticated skill set. But now it's so easy for anyone to be able to publish text, images, video, which allows us to truly communicate, collaborate, and share with one another. And what it's created, the reason we put this picture from the Lord of the Flies in there, is it's sort of created this, what we call Lord of the E-Flies, where all of these students have been out using some of these tools for years, and, you know, and you hear about the digital native, digital immigrant sort of thing, and they're ahead of us in terms of maybe using some of the tools. But I think where they lack is, there's nobody, I shouldn't say there's nobody, it's getting better and better, but they lack that sort of guidance in how do you use the tools safely, responsibly, effectively, and meaningfully. And I think that that's where we come in. So we need to help them to use these tools in a responsible, safe, effective, and meaningful way. And so one of the ways that we found is through what we call global collaborative learning. And when we talk about global collaborative learning, it doesn't even necessarily mean that you're connecting with another partner somewhere else in the world, but it's the whole idea that you're collaborating outside of those four walls of your classroom, that you're opening up your classroom, that your students are sort of exiting the classroom walls via the internet, asynchronously and synchronously, and others are coming into your classrooms asynchronously and synchronously. And the huge part about all this is that the tasks need to be real and meaningful. Oops, I just lost mine. There we go. And like Mally said, what we've found through this journey is that it's brought for us in our board, there's a character focus for a number of years. There's probably something similar in most boards. And what it's done for us is it's taken some of these character words and turned them into action words for us. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go along.
So most of the projects that we're going to be talking about, or 3 or 4 of the projects that we're going to be talking about, come from an organization called iEarn. It's the International Education Resource Network, and their tagline is learning with the world, not just about it, because it's an organization that connects about 250,000 teachers, apparently about 1 million students globally, and they all of the projects have, as I said, a curricular base. And the students investigate a concept together, whether it be water quality in different countries, or heroism, or a math concept, or learning about folk and fairy tales in their countries. They get together in forums or wikis or blogs, and they talk about that concept and learn with each other, and actually get a real world a real world perspective on different things that are happening in the world, and learn about the students that they're working with and learn with them. The web address is, if you can go to collaborate.iron.org. And fortuitously, IRON just released a new promo video, and it's amazing. So we just wanted to share that with you. And I think, Louise, if you can take us to the link, should we be able to click on this and watch it? Yeah, there we go. So that's just a little bit of information about sort of the mission statement of IRON and how it connects students. And the way IRON is run is, in each country there are country coordinators who communicate with the members of the IRON members in that country. So most of them are volunteers. In IRON US, for example, they're sort of the hub of all of IRON, and they're funded and they have paid people, but in most countries they're run by volunteers, and they help other teachers get in touch with projects and other classrooms around the world. And so, yeah, there is an IRON Canada, and we'd be happy if you'd like to join. Both Jim and I are the country coordinators, and we'd love to share some ideas with you. So that we're going to talk a bit about some of the projects. And I'm getting a white stream. Okay, so there are about 250 projects running at any time, or running in IRON, and some of them are short-term. Some of them run for about 6 weeks, and others can take literally years. There are some that are called learning circles, where they are 16-week projects that are you're matched with 8 to 10 classes around the world to study a concept like heroism, or studying writings of other students, or creating a collaborative newspaper. If you join IRON, you have access to the Collaboration Center, which was the previous link. And you are able to join any of the projects that are available. And once you join any of the projects, there's always a project facilitator in the project, and they will get back to you about how the project works and the classrooms that are involved, and maybe give you some programming suggestions. Some of them they're very fluid and very grassroots. So quite often the teachers take leadership and give suggestions about how they would like the project to run. Even better, there are several projects that the students can really drive the direction of the way that the project is going. So they're not specifically set out with a beginning and an end in mind. The learning circles are a little bit more structured, but the beauty of these projects is they really allow the students to take ownership and answer questions. If you're interested in inquiry-based learning, these are perfect projects to become involved in. So if you go to iron.org, it will take you to a link that will enable you to join, and you can join IRON Canada for free right now and get involved in some of these projects. And the great part is that right now they're accepting registrations for learning circles, which will be starting again in January. And we'll talk a little bit about those in a bit. So since we're all junior and intermediate and senior teachers, and I'm going to talk about primary, this is very quickly a great project called the Holiday Card Exchange, where this project is an example where it begins in October and ends at Christmas time, because it's a project where you'll be learning students are learning about holidays and celebrations around the world. And the project facilitator matches you with 8 other countries, and what you do is you create cards that are based on your holidays in the fall, and that you send them to 8 other countries, and in exchange you will receive holiday cards, fall holiday cards from 8 other countries around the world. The way that the students communicate in many of the IRON projects, they communicate in forums, and these are password protected and secure, and only students who are involved in the actual project and the teachers that are involved in the actual project are able to go into these forums. And the students talk about their, in this one in particular, they talk about their holidays, and they share pictures of the cards. This has been a particularly active project. We have some teachers who are sharing holiday songs with each other, and these cards came this afternoon. This is my class, and we're working with a grade 3 class. My kids are in grade 5, and we're working with a grade 3 class, and we're teaching each other. They're sort of learning buddies in this project. And these cards came from Lithuania, which was really cool. So these came this afternoon, and then of course I had to put them in the picture in the presentation. As we talked about at the beginning, some of these projects were able to connect with students using Skype or Adobe Connect or video conferencing. And we wanted to connect. Jim and I had a good friend in the IRON coordinator in Australia, and his granddaughter is in the same project. He is in the same project circle as my class. So he said, well, let's get the kids connecting. Well, there's a big time difference between Australia and Canada. So we had the kids in Australia were at school at 7 o'clock, and we came back to school at 7 o'clock at night. And the beautiful part about it was we were able to invite the parents and siblings, and they came, and we used Adobe Connect to talk to the students in Australia. We read a story called Possum Magic, which is an Australian folktale, and we just happened to have a little bit of Vegemite left over from another project that we did with Australia, and the kids ate Vegemite sandwiches together. So that was kind of exciting. But the parents really understood why we were doing some of these collaborative projects, and when they saw the sort of the depth of the connection, so it was quite awesome. And you know, as we're communicating with the other classes, we're constantly sending pictures back and forth. We're putting them on, sharing them on our blogs. So the students in the other countries see when we send off their packages, and then when we see when they receive them. So in this other picture, this is our last year's project, but you see that our cards are being on display at an event in Taiwan. So a really simple, short project, but really meaningful for the students, and they learned a lot about our own culture as they were sharing it with others. Jim, do you want to talk about Art Miles?
Sure. And one of the reasons that we like the Art Miles project is because it highlights, and we're going to show you mostly all these projects actually, you don't need to have a lot of technology in your classroom to be able to do them. But for a lot of reasons. I mean, many of the people that we're participating with are from developing regions of the world, and it's important that everyone's able to participate. So they aren't designed so that everybody has to have a one-to-one laptop program or anything like that. Far from it. As a matter of fact, we've engaged in web conferences where participants have jumped off the back of dilapidated pickup trucks to go to cyber cafes, to hang sheets on the walls, to connect with us. And the Art Miles project started a number of years ago, and essentially it started out where students were creating murals based on a variety of different themes, all sort of Millennium Development Goals and hope-based themes, with the idea that a couple of years ago they took, I forget how many thousand different murals, and they wrapped them, they were to be wrapped around the pyramids in Egypt to celebrate the end of the decade of peace. And what happened, what was really, I mean, just that alone was a cool part of the project, and they could share their projects online, their paintings and so on and so forth online. But it actually evolved in what's even more interesting, I find, is a collaborative Art Miles project, where your students can be paired up with, it's usually students in Japan, because that's where they're running the project out of, is Japan. And what happens is your students, and we've done this with all the way from kindergarten right up to grade 11 or 12, I believe, where students are paired with those, you and the other classroom choose a particular theme, and in this particular case, the students chose fairy tales. And the interesting part is then you have to then teach your Japanese partners about your fairy tale. So in this case, it's the Paper Bag Princess. But again, like I said, you have to teach them that fairy tale, and then the Japanese students paint their half of the mural based on what you've taught them. Then the mural travels back to Canada, over to Canada. The Japanese students taught our students here about Little Fingerling. Our students paint the mural based on what they've learned, and then eventually it all goes together in one mural. The murals travel around to different art galleries around the world. Eventually they're showcased at an Iron Conference, wherever that is, somewhere in the world that year. And then they went to be wrapped around the pyramids a couple of years ago. And I think, and I'm sure maybe Mally can type that in the chat pod, they're looking for some other big event to sort of kick off another huge series of murals. But like I was saying, we've also done this in senior classrooms where students, for example, in a science class would look at something like water quality, and then they would have to teach, in our case, our students were teaching students in Japan about water quality issues in Lake Simcoe. And so even though it's science, they still, even though they're painting, and some people might think, well, that's art, but it's not, because the content of what they were painting was all science-based, and they had to teach those students in Japan about water quality issues. Those students, our students here, were completely engaged in and learning about those water quality issues because they knew that they were going to have to teach them. This is just like a beautiful mural that was painted. Was this the one from the conference itself, Molly?
Yeah, it's the one that was painted when all the students were here. So
right, because we actually hosted the from around the world. They were here together in Canada and Barrie a couple of years ago, and so this is what they painted together. And this is a beautiful mural that is actually sort of attached to a sort of a sad story, and this is the story, a prayer. This is a story that's posted in the My Hero project, which we're going to be talking about in a minute, which also shows how the different projects can sort of interconnect. And that mural that you saw being painted here was for, on the far left, on the left here, you can see Atsuko, who runs the Japanese Art Mile project, the collaborative aspect of it. And her son was mountain climbing and lost his life mountain climbing. So this was a mural that was created and dedicated to Masa to celebrate his life. And then somebody wrote a My Hero story about him. And just touchingly enough, Mally and I just received some books from Atsuko in the mail about 2 weeks ago, I guess. Some beautiful artwork and stories and poems that Masa had written as a celebration of his life. And it's this kind of stuff that just, even as I'm talking about it, this is why our teaching changed, and this is what brought us back into teaching, because it now became real, meaningful, authentic, and I find myself even just getting all even emotional, even just thinking about it, because just having met Atsuko and worked with her, she's such a beautiful person, and it's a sad and tragic story, but she's brought about a lot of beauty and meaning to it. So that's a great project. Yeah, and it doesn't matter what you're teaching, what age level. and you don't need a lot of technology to do it.
And the other thing that, a question that often comes up, particularly with these two projects, the Art Miles project and the Holiday Card project, is funding. And you know, we all realize that teaching is the only job that you pay to work at. And the Art Miles project is actually funded by the Japanese Ministry of Education. The Japanese Ministry of Education has paid for probably 400 collaborations over the past 5 or 6 years, because they really see the value in the students working together and learning with each other, and the absolute necessity to keep art in the schools. And so it's a really well-funded project. So the only cost that Canadian teachers or the teachers on the other side of the collaboration have to cover is mailing the mural back to Japan, which costs about $40. And with the holiday card exchange, once you sign up for it, you do commit to sending the cards to 8 countries. And we found that our parent councils have been very supportive in providing funding for these projects to go on, because they see and they hear their kids coming home excited about this, so the parents are excited about it. Once they see you know, a video conference, for example, with their students, with the students in Australia, they get it, so they're really happy. We find that the parent councils that we've worked with have been really happy to fund it, and those are really the only costs that are involved in running these projects. And you know, and from our perspective, for years we paid for it ourselves, and because it really brought us a lot of joy, and we saw what it did for our students and how excited they were. So that's always a question that comes up, is the cost. So as Jim sort of alluded to, is every year there's a conference, an IRON conference, where students or teachers come together to work together. Most of the time we learn and work together online, you know, very similar to what we're doing now. We get together on Skype or Illuminate, and we do our planning together virtually. But there's really nothing like a face-to-face conference. And to a ballpark, but how much does a project cost? We mailed our 8 packages off yesterday, and it was $100. And we had to send a couple of them airmail. The ones to Australia and Taiwan had to go airmail. The other ones went surface, so it was about $100. But that was 2 classrooms, and yeah, and the mural cost about $40 to set up. Is that total for the project? Well, the cards, I'm a scrapbooker, so I took everything in for the kids and they loved it. So, or you can just, the cards are anything. So the total for the project would be about $100. It really isn't too bad. So every year there's a conference, or now they're going the every other year model, which has been great. And at the same time as a teachers conference, when we're meeting face-to-face, the students who are working on these projects have the opportunity to get together and talk about their projects at a youth summit, which is amazing. It's actually incredible. So 2 years ago in Taiwan, we had the opportunity to interview some of the students and ask them what they thought of coming together with youth and working with youth internationally. So we just like to share this one reflection with you, a girl from Cameroon.
So if you want to just click on the link in the chat pod, it'll take you to the video.
So I love what she says about just really learning about each other's differences and how important that is to her, and how connecting has enabled her to see that we all have so much in common. And I think that's one of the goals that we have when we're working through these projects with the students, is that we really do learn about what's happening in countries. We learn that our problems are the same, that our joys are the same, that students really are similar and teachers are very similar as we work together. The My Hero project, an incredible project. We often, people often ask us, where do we start if we want to get started in these collaborative projects in learning with the world, and this is one of the places where we often tell them to start. It's a great project that started in 1997 in California by this incredible woman named Jeannie Myers, who wanted her kids to learn about positive role models. She said that she'd had enough of turning on the news and hearing bad news all the time. So she just wanted her own children to have a place where they could learn about positive role models. So if you go to their site, myhero.com, there are tons of resources in there for teachers that will lead you through a project that you could do either in a learning circle with 8 to 10 classes from around the world, or you can do it as a standalone project with just your students. What they provide for you is a whole ton of resources. There's resources in there to help you write the traditional 5-paragraph essay that will lead your students through interviewing skills if they have that opportunity to interview their hero and actually talk to their hero. They have tutorials on how to create a podcast interview. They have a whole, a very comprehensive library of video creation materials that will lead you through step-by-step on how to create a documentary with your class, or how to create a narrative story with your class. Because on the My Hero website, they really allow for students to differentiate their learning and their assessment. They have a place where students can submit stories. They have a place where they can submit artwork and films and podcasts, just so any way that your students want to express what they've learned, they can share it. When your students have created their hero story, they have the opportunity to, as a teacher, you could make a website for your class to sort of collect all of the stories and artwork and films and put them together. And if you're able to send an email or attach a picture to an email, it's as easy as that to create this web page that you can share. And again, it's a great tool for you to be sharing with your families, with the parents, about what is actually going on in your class and what their students are learning. It's very visual, and the kids are really, really proud of the work that they do during this project. And it's a fantastic project, and Jim and I know Jeannie really well, and she's probably one of the most inspirational people that I've ever personally met. This is her whole life, it's her heart and soul, and she puts so much love and so much work into this project so that she can bring the same sort of positive experience to like 3 million kids around the world access the site. So the other great part about this is, once again, is if you're working through in a learning circle with the other 8 to 10 classes from around the world in a facilitated project, you have the opportunity to connect with them. And you know, the project facilitator tries to include classes from as many countries as possible when you're working in your learning circle. And in this particular webinar or particular web conference, we had classes from Australia, from Canada, from Russia, from the United States and Mexico, all at the same time, talking about their heroes from all over the world. And one thing, sort of going back to what Lady Diana said, is the kids realized that they all have the same heroes. They all have the same people that they look up to, which was really, really interesting and a great experience to be able to share. So really, when you think about, you know, creating these pieces of work with your students, again, it's how are you going to share them, and how are you going to you know, get your students to really show what they've learned. And it's a great opportunity for them. And I'll let Jim talk about this story.
Right. So like Mally was saying, you can either do the project as a standalone classroom project and then create it very, very easily create a class web page, or you can join one of those learning circles, and I think I put the link for more information in the chat pod. And if you're looking to sign up for one of those learning circles, the next session will be, you can sign up, I think you need to sign up by mid-January, isn't it, Melanie? I don't think they have a definite date on there right now, but
yeah,
as long as you sign up by mid-January.
Mid-January, because it starts at the beginning of February.
Right, then you'd be able to sign up, because there's 2 sessions per year for the actual learning circle where you'll be connected with the other classrooms. Great way to start, because then you have that facilitator in the project who's going to help guide you through it, take you through the entire project. So the learning circles themselves are facilitated then, versus you doing the standalone project in your classroom. If you do the learning circle, then you're connected with 5 or 6 other classrooms. One of those classrooms will have a facilitator in it who will guide everybody else through the project, both in terms of content and technology. So the great part is there's always a web conference involved, like Mally was talking about it, but that's all set up by someone else. And then so you don't have to worry about that, and you can learn how to do all that as you go along. And then eventually you could end up facilitating a learning circle yourself. And so what we love about it is the fact that, again, the students' writing becomes real, meaningful, and authentic. So a few years ago, we had one of our students writing about David Virgo, and David Virgo, I don't know if you remember, was that gentleman on the 400 a few years ago. There was that huge problem with street racing, and he drove his transport truck off the road in order to, and ended up losing his life in order to save the lives of others. So we had this little boy in our class in our school named Gabe, and so he wrote about David Virgo, and Gabe didn't like to write. So he wrote the story about David Virgo, and then it turned out that Mrs. Virgo found the story online and came to the school actually and wanted to meet Gabe. And so here she is here where she's meeting Gabe for the first time. And what's really, really cool about it is he now, so here's this student who was a reluctant writer, and he's now involved with Mrs. Virgo's fund in order to help her project, in order to help prevent street racing. And then what happened is about 2 years after Gabe had written this story, we were putting something together to talk about the My Hero project, and Mally went online and noticed he'd actually got into the site 2 years later and re-edited its story and posted it again. And that's what we love. I mean, I can't think of, when you think of more traditional sort of teaching methods where, a student writes the essay, hands it in, gets the mark, you hand it back, it's not likely that they're ever going to go back and re-edit that work because it doesn't have that authentic and meaningful audience. But in this case, it did for Gabe, and that motivated him to go back in and re-edit his work on his own.
And the other major portion of the My Hero site is Jeannie is a filmmaker herself, and she realizes the power of media and how youth love to create media about issues for which they're passionate. So about 10 years ago, she started the My Hero Film Festival and invites children from around the world, and it's actually gotten to be quite a large film festival. It's now filmmakers from around the world who submit their films about their heroes, about environmental issues, about peace advocacy, and to share their work and celebrate their accomplishments. And actually, the students that I worked with last year entered a little film that you're going to see later in the film festival, and I found out today that they won the elementary category, I was really proud of them. Like, it was just announced about 5 o'clock. So it's a great opportunity for students to submit their work and to have it seen by a global audience. And we know that kids are great media creators right now. They're producing videos, they're putting them on YouTube. But again, this gives them the opportunity to create meaningful media that has a purpose and to share a message. And it's a great way to showcase their work. So there's a People's Choice Award that the My Hero site sponsors every year. They choose 10 of their favorite films that they would like youth to vote on. So if you would like to do something with your class in computer lab time, it really is a great little activity to do, to vote on their favorite. But what we love about this project is it really allows students to express what they've learned in so many ways, and also to share their work. So most of those projects, or all of those past projects, were from IRON. As we said, there are about 250 projects going. Anything from, in science, there are so many secondary projects that are going. We're elementary teachers, so most of our samples are from the elementary, but we do work very closely with some teachers in other countries who are secondary teachers, and so if you need a suggestion about a project that's running, we can certainly do that. Or any of the ones that we've talked about, maybe not the holiday cards, but definitely Art Miles and My Hero, they have opportunities for senior students to connect, especially in the learning circles for students in secondary schools. These two organizations are absolutely fantastic for intermediate and senior students, and junior students as well. Not so much primary, because the content is definitely geared for older students. But the Center for Global Education is an organization in, oh yeah, Jim, do you want to talk about the Global Teenager Project for a sec? Sorry, I forgot that one.
No, I was just thinking if there were some more secondary people in there, that's definitely worth checking out that link, because again, they'll help to partner you up with other classrooms around the world. And really long story short, essentially it's very inquiry based. You're going to have a specific topic or theme. So you might, for example, be partnered with, let's say, a class in Russia and a class in Mexico and a class in Iran. And you may be looking at an issue, let's say, like AIDS, and then your students will develop some questions, the students in the other countries will develop questions, and then now you have a pool of questions that all countries are going to go and research and then come back together and share their answers. So the interesting thing is you end up, even though you have the same questions surrounding the same theme, very often you end up with different answers depending on where you're coming from in the world. So that then opens up a whole different sort of perspective and conversation. So that's just a great secondary project if you're looking for something like that.
And these two, thanks Jim, and these two organizations, Center for Global Education and Taking It Global, and actually IRON now, we all work really closely together in creating opportunities for students to connect using video conferencing, or with using Ustream to link into special events. For example, the Center of Global Education every year has a video conference with survivors from the Haiti earthquake, and connects the students that have supported them in Canada to the kids in Haiti, and they talk about the impact of their support, and also what the students in Haiti are now doing to to build their school and to build their lives. Taking It Global is a place where the students can go to connect. It's a social networking site for students, and they can go in and investigate issues. They can create their own profiles. They can meet students from around the world who are interested in the same issues as they are. If they just go up to global issues, they can connect on, let's say, women's rights in developing countries, and then it would link them to students who have an interest in the same area, and they can talk about how they can take action. They also provide projects that the students can join, and students individually can join, or that teachers can join as well. And we're just going to talk about a couple of them. One of them, Louise asked me just before we got going this evening, what was my favorite project from last year, and I think it was, I know for sure, it's one that was called Deforestaction. And Deforestaction is a project. The link is on, I think it's on the next page. but it's a project where students learn about the impact of deforestation in Borneo. And at first when I looked at it, I thought, well, why should my kids care about that? Like, why do they really need to know about that? But when I learned more about it, I actually learned that there was a lot of deforestation happening in Canada and the United States, and closer to home than actually in Borneo. But we also, through our grade 5 and 6 environmental studies program, learned that it does in fact have a true global effect. So we had the opportunity to learn a little bit about the orangutans and the beautiful rainforest in Borneo, and had the privilege, and I can say for sure it was a privilege, to talk to one of the scientists who are in Borneo. This video conference was put together by the Center for Global Education. It's project sponsored by Taking It Global, and we were able to speak to the scientist. His name is Dr. Willie Smith, and he is one of the scientists on the ground in Borneo, and his job is to rehabilitate the orangutans that have lost their habitats. And this particular little adorable one, her name is Jojo, and she's an orphan because her mother was killed in the process of protecting her home. So the minute that my students saw this little orangutan, they completely bought in, and they said, okay, what are we going to do to save Jojo and to help Jojo and to help and to be part of this movement that's helping to save the rainforest. And they found that it was actually a palm oil. They are palm oil companies that are going in and cutting down the rainforest at the rate of 3 football fields a minute. And the challenge to them was really simple: just tell your parents which products are palm oil free and which ones have palm oil in them, and we'll work to purchase those products that are palm oil free. So the kids in my class ran a whole awareness campaign, and really felt that they had made other people aware as well. We took it a step farther last year. We were really fortunate. We're kind of, I don't know, I think we're very fortunate that through these organizations we've made connections with other people, and we find that often, there might be somebody that you'd love your class to talk to, but you can just say, I'm not really sure if they would do it. Well, the worst thing they could say is no. Like, they just might say, okay, we don't want to, we don't have time, or we aren't able to talk to your kids. But more often than not, you'll have an opportunity to speak to somebody really, really interesting, and that can challenge your students. And this is Emily Hunter, and she's an environmentalist, and she was working with Dr. Smith down in Borneo, and she had just come back from Borneo. But not only is she an environmentalist in her own right, she's the daughter of Bob and Emily Hunter, Bob and Kathy Hunter, who are the founders of Greenpeace. So she really has social justice and environmentalism in her blood. So she came to my class, and because Jim and I believe so strongly in connecting classrooms, we looked at it as an opportunity to invite about 30 other classrooms to come in and listen to Emily's message. So Emily came, and we had 30 classes from Newfoundland to California listening to her message. And quite funnily enough, just before Emily started, we had a lockdown at our school, so you never know what's going to happen. So we had to hold the webinar off a little bit. But anyway, it was kind of funny when it happened, in hindsight. But Emily gave a fantastic message, and again, her whole challenge to the kids was, how can we use the tools that we have at our disposal and share it with the world. So the kids decided to make a little video, and it's the one I talked about a little before, that they submitted to the My Hero Film Festival. They had just been working on a claymation unit, on a narrative claymation unit, and these two kids came up to me and said, we want to change we don't want to do an Egyptian fable, we want to do an awareness video for the rainforest, and so that we could share with others, so that they won't that other people know that we can save the rainforest by not buying palm oil products. So do we have time to show it, Jim?
Totally up to you.
Okay, well, we'll just, yeah, so if you just want to click on the link, we can just, you can see what this, these are 10-year-old students who created this awareness campaign. That's the action that the students decided to take as the reaction to Emily Hunter coming and being involved in the Deforestaction project. Now this is one of the projects that goes, it's a continual project. There are eco-warriors on the ground all the time. They're communicating with the students from all over the world. Oh, I missed a slide. The kids have the opportunity to purchase a plot of land through the Earth Watchers program in Borneo, and there are satellites that monitor the land and send reports back to the students. So it becomes very interactive, and you can send messages to the Eco Warriors, and they'll respond, and it's just a great project. And at the same time, the kids are connecting with all the other students that are involved in the project as well, and doing some action planning and brainstorming and how they're going to increase their commitment to help the rainforest. So if you are teaching junior, intermediate, or secondary, it's a great project to get involved in and hit so many different curriculum areas. And actually this summer, Jim and I had the honor of meeting Dr. Smits and one of the other eco-warriors at the ISTE conference in San Diego, and they sent a message back to my kids, and we posted it for them on their blog. So that's the Deforestaction. Do you want to talk about Dignity Day, Jim? Okay, so Dignity Day is another. This is a very succinct project that runs in October, and again, it's another organization. It's called Global Dignity Day. It was started by the Crown Prince of Norway, who realized that students needed that youth needed to lead a dignified life. But in order to lead a dignified life, they also needed to know how to help others lead a dignified life. So he is the founder of Global Dignity Day, and he connected with who he felt were world leaders in connecting youth around the world. So he contacted Jennifer Corriero, who, if you go back to the very beginning, she was the one who talked about youth taking action and being change makers, and is one of the founders of Taking It Global. So she through Taking It Global and through the Center of Global Education, they put together a Global Dignity Day for Canada. And what they do is invite students from secondary, intermediate, junior, intermediate, and secondary students from all over Canada to participate in a full-day video conference. So that there's an hour video conference with some keynote speakers. The keynote speakers that they had this year were there was a boy named Wes, and I forget his last name, but he's working to build playgrounds in Aboriginal communities, and talked about the impact of having play as being very important. They had the founder of Right to Play participate in the video conference, and at this time they were challenging students to say, what can you do to lead a dignified life? That's the first part of the day. The second part is breakout sessions. The kids go to different, within their own schools, they go to breakout sessions, and we had about 400 students in our school at Fieldcrest working through 20 activity centers that were all, we tried to really look at differentiated instruction. So we had art and dance and drama and music, and kids doing tableau and creating murals and doing tagging walls, and really trying to think of how we could reach all the different learning levels and learning styles of the students. At the same time, we had the kids we had kids that were in charge of tweeting. So we wanted the world to know what was going on at Fieldcrest, and we were tweeting out pictures of what was happening. And a couple of these pictures actually got as far as the Crown Prince of Norway, and he sent a tweet back to Jennifer Corriero, and George Strombolopoulos, or whatever his name is, from CDC, also was following some of our tweets as well. So that was really exciting. So it's a great way for the kids to use technology to reach out to the world to let them know that that's it, Strombolopoulos, whatever, what was happening in our school. It was an amazing day. We absolutely loved it. So it was, again, just a one-day event. We were able to connect through using our networks to find out what was going on, and then had our students engage in those special activities. It didn't take a lot of planning, but it really made a huge impact on our school. We are all so accountable for what students are doing in our classrooms, and when we do this presentation for administration, we talk about how student engagement goes up and how our reading and writing scores during the time that we were working with other students went up 20%. Reading would go up 18% and writing would go up 20%. But what we really find is the kids are just more engaged in the projects. They're engaged in their learning. They're at school every day. They're excited about learning, and how they've really taken an interest in participating in school. And to us, that's what's more important. We're not teaching the curriculum anymore. We are really teaching the whole child. And to go back to where the Heartware comes from is that all of these projects, we feel, speak to the heart. It really speaks to the character of the kids, and how their learning becomes very personal and very heartfelt, and you hear them talking and using those terms, and caring and empathy and inclusiveness isn't just a word anymore. They become actions. So that's why we call it the Heartware. So can you talk about CDB now, Jim?
And probably, like I was saying earlier, there are some projects like the Christmas card project that are very finite in terms of their time. There are other projects that are lengthier that go on for 2 or 3 months at a time. There are times when we'll just connect with another classroom by video conference and share art lessons. We did that classroom in Turkey, and that was great, just a one-day, one-off type of deal. And then there are other projects like this that you end up starting, and they just go on and on for years, maybe not what you planned in the beginning, but due to the organic nature of a lot of these projects, they take on a life of their own, the students get involved in their own way, and they go in directions that you don't really foresee at the beginning of the project. And that's what happened a number of years ago when we first started off in this journey, actually. We got connected through Iron, created an account, posted on the teacher forum, which is a great place to post once you first get in there and just introduce yourself, and immediately you have teachers from all over the world writing back to you. That was exciting. But we had this idea where we wanted to connect with a developing community, send them some video equipment and cameras, fundraise for them, and let them document the difference that would be making in their communities. Long story short, Iron connected us with a community access center in Freetown, Sierra Leone, where they had about 15 computers connected to the internet when it was all working, where former child soldiers were able to get together and share their stories with the rest of the world and get involved with other Iron projects. So through that, we ended up meeting this beautiful boy named Mohammed Siudabey. When we first met him, he was probably 8 years old. Again, long story short, through the equipment that we sent them, they got involved with another organization, put together this video of his life, and it just shook us all to the core. He was so articulate. We all immediately fell in love with him. So what ended up happening is, again, really, really long story short, for a number of years, we connected with Siudabey online, Mally's class and other classrooms, fundraised for him. We're able to help support his education in Freetown because he had no family, desperately wanted to go to school. The students helped him get to school. And then eventually, again, another long story short, through his poetry that he was now sharing online, he was invited to the United States. Once he got to share his poetry at a college there, once he got there, he decided he wasn't going back home and claimed refugee status. And this is him now. You can see now he's meeting these students who are probably grade 7 or 8 at the time, who had been working with him since they were in grade 1 online, and now they're getting to meet him face to face. And the really cool thing about it is now Sidibe has finished high school in New Jersey, and he's now going to university in the United States, where he wants to become an international lawyer to help prevent what happened to him from happening to other children in the world. So you just sit there and you think, what these students started a number of years ago has this huge, meaningful effect not only on Sidibe's lives, but on their lives and on the lives of people that we don't even know yet, whose lives that Sidibe is going to touch. And last year, through Taking It Global again, we helped them to put together a web conference with Sidibe and another student from Sierra Leone right now, where they connected with classrooms from across North America and sharing their story, and it was absolutely riveting. Because every time Sidibe tells his story, we end up learning things that we didn't know before. And I don't know, did you want to share that video now, or do we have time, Melanie? Or
it's about 6 minutes, so I don't think we have time. So maybe unless people want to watch it, what I find really inspirational about Sidibe, besides everything, is he did a video conference last summer with Jeremy Gilley, who is the founder of Peace One Day, and was just incredible when he was addressing an international audience and telling his story. So yeah, I think that's a good idea, Louise, to put the link in there. And yeah, this is probably the best speaking I've ever heard. And as Jim said, every time he speaks, we learn something new about his experience. And just to think that this young boy is now you know, on a full scholarship at George Washington University and working hard and really seeing the value in his education, and also wanting to teach others about the value of education is just incredible. He's a wonderful, wonderful young man. But yeah, we're inspired by him all the time. So we won't do the Edmodo. So perhaps if you have any questions, if you want to take your microphones and ask any questions, and I know we've got about 15 minutes left. And Jennifer, we know that's a lot to take, and our advice is if you're interested in participating in any of these projects, that you can get in touch with us or Louise or Syria, and we can put you in touch with the organization that you're interested in. But you know, even if you start with one small thing, it will really make a difference for your students. And it does take a little bit of well, not a little bit. It takes a lot of energy to implement these with your students, but it really brings you a lot of energy as well. So they do take more energy, but they're very energizing. And Nicole, I completely understand the time commitment involved with curriculum expectations, but I think if you start with something like My Hero, you'll be able to meet your reading and writing and media literacy expectations and or your oral expectations when you're going through the project. So we hope that you were able to see some of those connections as you go through. We look at them as integrated or embedded into program, and really definitely not as an add-on. It just is a different way of teaching the same stuff that we've already done. When you do, for example, if you're doing something like the My Hero project. The students are researching their heroes, so they're doing research skills. They're using graphic organizers, and we're certainly able to send those off to you if you're interested in them. They're doing the pre-writing stage and the editing and the publishing, and it's great. Is there a big question? Very good. My Hero, definitely.
And look what,
definitely the My Hero project.
And that's what you're saying, like not all projects have to have, I mean like the Sea to Bay project, that's taken up years. Some projects take months, some projects weeks, but you can do, like, you can connect with another classroom, just post something on the iron forum, you can connect with another classroom on whatever topic you're interested in. Like I said, we did one with a classroom in Turkey where all we did was we video conferenced with them and we shared an art lesson. So, so we did the art lesson one day, both sets of students do the art together, and then posted those images on a wiki, and then the students can comment on that, and then the next week, a teacher in Turkey did the art lesson. Again, both sets of students in both countries did the artwork, posted it up there. Not a big time commitment at all, and but it was also very effective. So you don't necessarily have to make a major time commitment, and I think it can be overwhelming too, because you look in the project book and there's like hundreds of projects, and or then you look at the Taking It Global site and there's more projects, and Center of Global Education, more projects. It's a good problem to have that there's almost too many ways that you can go. So what you can do if you want is just email Mally or myself and just let us know, what age level you're teaching, what subject you're teaching, and then what we can do is we can work with you to collaborate with you to help you to figure out what might be a good place for you to start. I think so. Yeah, so our emails are right there. There's Mally's, should be on the slide that you're just seeing there right now. And I thought I saw a question coming up. Do we use Adobe Connect? And that's a great question, and that's something that we were talking about just before we started here. It will all depend on what we're doing. And for that Turkey art one, we actually used video conferencing equipment for that one, and that was because they had the equipment in Turkey, we had the equipment here. If both ends have video conferencing equipment, that's the ideal way to go. If we're working with with a partner that doesn't have that equipment, then we'll go to Adobe Connect. There are other times that we'll use Blackboard Collaborate, because maybe that's being set up by somebody else somewhere else, and we'll use that. And sometimes we'll use Skype. So really, the tool that we use will always depend on the purpose of the project and who we're connecting with, and then we just use whichever tool is going to work best given that circumstance. But Adobe Connect is probably one that we use very frequently.
Yeah, and I'll just answer the question from who asked? Stacy. The question about My Hero and students choosing an appropriate hero. Within the resources that you receive in the My Hero website, there are a lot of lessons establishing a hero and looking at the differences between celebrity and hero, and what makes a hero, and looking at all of those character traits. So I completely agree with you. When we first start talking about, who is your hero, the boys will come up with hockey players or rap artists, and the girls will come up with, Justin Bieber, and they're great people and everything. But when we really get into the meat of the project and looking into the heart of heroism, I think you'll find that the students will pick, a lot of them pick people that are very close to them, who have overcome challenges, and they really get into the sort of the deeper critical thinking about what makes a hero. So with the resources that are on the site, and again, that we could also share with you and send to you the ones that would have been successful when we've taught the unit, it really does lead them down the path to what is who is a hero. And there's some fantastic discussions that you can get into with the kids, and if you're in a learning circle, engage in those discussions with other classes too. Yeah, I think the main thing is, like we said at the beginning, for us,
what reinvigorated our teaching career and what sort of took us down the road to using technology was just dissolving those walls in your classroom. So to me, it doesn't matter which project it is. It's just so important that you have real, meaningful, and authentic tasks for your students, and that's what the technology allows you to do, is to connect with other students, organizations, businesses, nonprofit organizations, and to connect and to collaborate and create real and meaningful and authentic learning experiences for your students. That, at the same time, will cover a myriad of curriculum expectations. And I think this final slide just has a link to some of the projects that we talked about here and a couple of other projects that we haven't. There'll be Adobe presenter presentations on them, so you'll be able to go, for example, to the My Hero project or the Art Miles project in here, or I think we have Global Teenager in there. And then you can click on those, and it will be sort of a narrated Adobe presenter presentation that tells you more about those projects, either for yourself or if you're looking to share them with other people. But again, feel free just to contact Mally or myself, and we can work with you and collaborate with you and help you to find a project and or partners that would fit in with your particular grade level, subject that you're teaching, time that you're looking to commit towards it, so we can help you to figure out what might work best for you.
Wow, thank you very, very much, Mally and Jim. I think it was Jennifer, was it you that said that basically your head's just buzzing? There are so many ideas, but definitely go away with what Mally said, to just pick something small that you connect with, and just start out there, and give your students a chance to explore and connect and just see what happens and what grows. This has been a fantastic webinar, and with so many resources, there are so many projects, and I know that kind of connecting to what Stacy said as well, that some of them are just so fabulous, and I think part of it is that that's probably not where the people that, in the end, the students that created that project, that might have been their not have been their very first project. So perhaps it does take a little while, and maybe sharing some of these examples with your students will kind of connect with them as well, so that they really do try and make a difference with how they're connecting, and that it's not just something that's a very surface connection. You really are working at giving students an opportunity to connect deeply. Right, Mally and Jim? It's not just a social thing, but it's a social change thing.
Yeah, definitely. The kids develop real caring and commitment towards others, and therefore, Cedar Bay, like he's our example of how these projects change lives, not just his, but ours as well.
Yeah, like at the end of the Iron Conference, where they actually got to meet together face to face after all these years for the first time, the news was there, and they were interviewing Cedar Bay and some of the students that were involved, and Cedar Bay was saying how much these students had changed his life. And then they turned the camera to a couple of the girls that were involved with it, and one of them said, well, Cedar Bay thinks that we've changed his life, but really he's the one that changed our lives. Then, of course, that was it. All the Kleenex came out. And that's what happens.
Yep, they're not just building learning and building connections. They're building relationships by the sounds of it, even if they're brief ones. So this is phenomenal. So thank you both very much. And I'm going to advance to the next slide and just let everyone know there's your feedback survey, the big orange link in the center of the page. If you want to click on that, and that'll open a window, and you can do that exit survey. And yes, Syria, I do know you want to jump in and say thank you as well. So thank you everyone from me, and Syria, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I first of all need to apologize to everyone for joining the session late. It is really obvious from the little that I was able to observe that I truly missed a very powerful and inspiring presentation by Melly and Jim. So thank you so much, Melly and Jim, for sharing ways to authentically engage students in learning, and also for offering to help the teachers here tonight to start their own project. So thank you again so very much. I also want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. I see some faithful followers here, and I'm really appreciative of that. Louise and I are going to follow up with many of you on the New Year's program. We're already looking at planning the program that will probably begin mid-January. So right now we're in the planning stages. We're certainly going to continue with technology technology sessions, critical thinking, financial literacy, and we're also looking at media violence as another topic, and also environmental education. So hopefully the program in the new year will be even richer than the fall. So thank you again to everyone, and Melly and Jim, thank you so very much. And of course, you know, we need to say thank you to Louise, because without Louise, I don't know that this program would run as well as it does. She takes care of all the details. And some of you, Jennifer, I know were here the one night that Louise was not able to join us. And I had a lame attempt at trying to be Louise. So Louise, thank you so much. You're amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Syria. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm so glad to be connecting with all these amazing folks as well, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future. So thank you, everyone, and thanks, Melly and Jim.
And